What's up, guys? Sorry for the little shaking there. Um, kind of curious because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's kind of, you know, even though I'm having trouble breaking away from a lot of this bad juju, and I'm on this roller coaster because there's things that have been triggering shit left and right here, and so I've either tried to avoid them doing a vid or I just speak my mind, allow it to be said for a while, and then I just put it to private. Because I want to be able to get myself to start posting more positive stuff again. I don't like being in this constant funk. Two things I know I need to get myself out and doing. I think part of it too is I've got a lot of stress coming from between doing this traveling stuff between here and and my house to repair the bathroom, get the place basically as prepared as best as possible for the next owners to take over if it sells here. We have a buyer, but I'm dealing with the easement thing. I contacted the attorneys that the realtor had suggested to me, and I learned there's only two down there. I talked to one of them and found out the other's pretty much the same way, and that's the only way that they'll help out with the easement stuff is if the other property owner is willing, even when that person knowingly bought property with buildings that were linked to the neighboring property having been built before those lots were even created. I mean, it's a big shit show. I'll talk about it in a different vid if I remember right. I'm stressed out with that. Yes, I'm stressed out dealing with talking to, I'm just gonna call him my person right now because I'm trying to remove the negative shit. Between that and like I have obviously some sort of mental trigger that when I talk to that person, I feel like I have to go right back to what was going on when we were together living down at the house, where I just shut down and I don't feel it's okay for me to really talk to anybody but specific people. Like it's an immediate trigger in my brain. And so then I start shutting people out more than I normally would, or I distance myself because I try to avoid any bullshit. Yeah, I have a little bit of an avoidance personality. And a lot of it has to do with, I try to think about how I would feel about certain situations, and when it comes to if other people were doing things to me, would I be uncomfortable with certain people talking about certain things with whoever I'm with? Yeah, I would. And so I avoid any chance of those types of things happening. I keep my friendships at that point in a public stance. Like if it's on social media, most of my interactions with other people would end up being like on threads or whatever, on a public space. Good friends and all that, trusted friends, yeah, I will chat with them through Messenger, and others, yeah, I might see like a meme or a post, I might share it to them if I think of them. It's like, hey, you might find this funny. I try to respect the boundaries of any relationship that I'm a part of. That includes my friendships, and my family relationships and all that. Even when I sit on here and bitch, because there's just so much on the plate, and it's like I really need to get away. And because I became so distracted and focused on trying to deal with this stuff with my house, and trying to get through these hurdles on getting it sold, As I said, as I was told, I got a buyer, but I haven't jumped these hoops. And so it's been causing a lot. Everything's compounding, and it's creating a lot of anxiety, unnecessary stress in essence, and it's triggering a lot of the shit in my brain to where I start catastrophizing everything. And that's where my Aspie brain starts kicking in. It's like, this isn't going to get better. It's like, I've been here before. It's just going to get worse again. Because every time it got worse. Or it gets harder. It's not like it's, keeping me from not wanting to get a new home, start a business. That's not the part. That's what's stressing me out, is I really want to get my life together, and it's really hard to do that in this type of atmosphere of how our country is. It's not just the younger generation that's having difficulties financially, it's all of us. Yes, some generations got the chance to have a better benefit of being able to get a home, where the younger generation may not get to, a lot of them may not ever get to know what it's like to own one. I think part of that too is they don't realize that if they realize that all they gotta do really is just build their credit up, quit buying, a bunch of bullshit. Like, if you really want it, like, don't be, if you really feel the need to go out, like, and buy something. I mean, obviously clothing, I understand most people would prefer to buy new than go to a thrift shop, which a lot of them aren't bad when it comes to their clothes. You obviously have to go home, wash them, clean them up, that stuff. But it's being willing to not try to live the lifestyle that you want to live, 5-10 years down the road. It's like those people, they have this nice expensive car, or these nice expensive shoes, jewelry, depending on if they like their jewelry or whatever, makeup, if that's the type of person they are. They might have multiple, pairs of expensive shoes or purses or wallets or, that type of stuff. And they have all these really nice things, but they're stuck living in a little shitty little apartment, or they might be stuck still living at a family's place, like they've never really had a chance to get out. It's because they've put their focus on the end game more so on how to get there. I did that for a long time. And it was like, this is what I want to do with my life, but I always would ask myself, how do I get there? And I knew and understood that a lot of it has to do with building your credit. I was one of those people, I never wanted to own a credit card. But I had to learn that there's different types of credit too. You've got your online credit, you've got like your purchasing type credit, like in the real world type stuff, like regular credit card shit, gas cards, all that stuff. And then you've got your credit, your renter's credit. And all these things will affect your buying power when it comes to a home. And because homes, it's not like what it used to be even when I was younger. I mean, when I was younger, yeah, they were more affordable. But even when you compared to what home prices were in the 90s compared to the average income, that's when we started to see the income gap between home prices and the average take home that people would make, like in a big way. Because before that, I mean, as you start to go back further, especially back to like into the 60s and 70s, or even into the 80s, in a lot part of it, a lot of times the average person's income, yearly income, on average was like half of what it cost to buy a house. So, for example, let's just say if the house was $100,000 home, which back then a lot of them were probably way cheaper, not necessarily, but just as an example, let's say the home was $100,000. The average person made $50,000 a year. Where now, the average person's still making? Because I'm not up to date on some of it, on this part. what, like 50 to 70,000 a year. That's my guess, 40 to 70. I'll just put a big window on it. But the average home is like 4 or 5 times that. And see, the only way, because on I've been living disabled for a long time. There was a moment there in time I went back to work so I can make sure that my son actually had some form of decent home, and I could afford to raise him while he was going to school until he graduated. I knew my health, my physical health could not last so long, but I pushed it because I wanted to do the best I could for my son. After his mom walked out and left, it was, $634 or some shit like that a month was not enough to not just keep a roof over his head, but be able to, buy the clothes and stuff that he needed for school, for everyday play, all that stuff. There was things I would do odd jobs. I'd find ways to bring in money to be able to do things for him, even during the holidays. But I especially ended up going back to work because I knew that was the only way it would work out. And I also knew in the end that going back to work would function as a positive, technically, on my SSD, not SSI. I mean, you don't have to work for that. SSD, you have to work to receive that. So I've had to make life work on less than $20,000 a year, and I was still able to work up from living in a shitty little shed and makeshift tent like shack to a fucking little 1-bedroom apartment to 2-bedroom townhome, and then it took a long time. And the big part of it was my credit wasn't that great. I never bothered to build it up. My income, because I knew how to manage it. I didn't have the problem of not necessarily paying my bills. There are times, like anybody else, you might be a few bucks short. Next thing you know, you get hit with the fucking overdraft fee. I've had that happen plenty. I'm not gonna lie about it. But see, even though I got my first home with the help of my family because my dad was willing to co-sign, I was taken out of the family will, so I won't get an inheritance. And this was their offer to me. This was their deal, and I accepted to it because of what was going on at the time. And so I went out and found a home that was less than what we were approved for. We were approved for $150,000. I went looking for something for under $100,000. And I knew in Oregon at that time it was going to be extremely hard to find a home that was in good enough condition to live in. There was nothing that existed at that time. And the only one I found was the one that was closest to being livable. And I do mean closest. There are other homes in that same price range where all the sheetrock was pulled out, and you can see where a bunch of tweakers had come in and just pulled the fucking copper out the wall. Where they're basically almost total rebuilds. And so I realistically was limited to the choice of one home in Oregon. The one before that I was actually trying for, the place turned was like, yeah, it's available. And I was like, all right, well, I'm heading down so I can see it, and then I'd like to make an offer. And we got within an hour of the place. Oh yeah, I got sold. Are you fucking kidding me? I just drove like almost about 250 miles. It would have been 300 something miles to go look at this place. I just told you guys we were coming to look at it when we were coming from, and you turn around and sell it to somebody online. I'm going to get it first come first serve, but at least have the respect to let us know when it happens instead of waiting till we contact you to let you know that we were almost there to look. So we got limited to one house, and at that time the apartment lease was gonna be up. We only had like a few weeks left, at that point about a month and a half left to find another place. Otherwise, this wasn't going to happen. And so we ended up getting this place, and that's how I worked it up. It went from, we had to replace the electrical and bought an electrical box in the place. We had to fix the filters and all that stuff for the well. We had to deal with a bat infestation that we didn't even know about until we got there, and you'd think the pest inspectors would have looked and said, yeah, there's a bat problem. Nope, they didn't say shit. So that took out a large chunk of the money that I had from my inheritance to deal with those repairs and bats. I actually had to sell my tractor to be able to deal with the electrical stuff. And then thankfully, if it wasn't for that relief thing, where everybody got $2,500 while the rest of the world's been continuously getting billions. Instead of using that on random bullshit, that went right to, again, towards that home to finish off what needed to be done. We had to deal with the plumbing, get that fixed and cleaned out. There was a lot of shit. By the time of repairs and after getting in the home, I was allotted my inheritance, which was $20,000. I know what my brothers are getting, and I will just say that they're getting more than that. They were getting more than that to begin with. It's just, yeah. My parents aren't rich. It's just my dad's been actually smart about how he saves his money. He's been very frugal, and he's a very humble guy. He'd be pretty much happy if he came down to it, if he had, his favorite beer on tap and his favorite news and sports on 24/7, and he didn't have to really do anything but scratch his balls and use the bathroom once in a while. It's not necessarily my dad's a drunk. My dad's just, he's not anymore. He has been drinking again, but he's not the alcoholic that he used to be. I think he's realizing that I think to a degree, there's moments that he realizes he's like walking that line, and he kicks back a bit. But, and I'm happy to see that he's doing that. I've noticed that here the last couple weeks, really. But I didn't go and waste that situation because I wasn't going to turn around like a lot of these kids when they get their inheritance. They go out and blow their shit. And the only reason why this happened was because of the shit talking that I was dealing with. It was doing damage. And when it got to my family, they were the ones who made the offer. I never asked or said anything about it other than that we were constantly struggling. And I just wish that we could find a place that we could afford that was more financially, within our realm, so that it made things easier, because I had to keep listening about how I was this lazy piece of shit because I was disabled. I couldn't do the stuff that I was doing. And since then, I had to force myself to do a lot harder work, and it's done more damage than what I would like. No, I got lucky that I had help from my family. The thing is the loan, even though my dad co-signed, he was the primary carrier. And even though we're both on the title, all the home payments, all that stuff benefited my dad's credit, which I was fine with. For him, it was like an investment. For me, it was a home. And the deal was that I made the house payments. I did the repairs. All that shit. And that's what I was doing. And part of that idea was if we kept the home, I had to keep working on it, basically do what I need to do to make it a better home. in the process, if at any point I decide to sell, which I was ready to sell within a couple years because I was just so burned out on all the shit that was going on within my relationship, within the family, my kids, everything. But I kept going. I kept doing updates on the property the best I could. I kept doing the repairs the best I could. I kept trying to clean up everything the best I could, down to when I found the old owner's dump site, thinking, well, I'm just going to put in a small, like 10 by 15 foot pond that's maybe 6-7 feet deep at the deepest. It turned into like 11-12 foot deep pond because we ended up finding the old owner's trash site that was right there. And we're like, great. We could have pulled out more. It would have been way deeper. But we realized that wasn't the thing to do. We're like, no, this is getting to be too big. This is too deep. You know, it's deep enough. I ended up with a 55,000, 60,000 gallon pond that when things froze, the soil behind one of the sides where the liner's at collapsed behind it, knocking it down, causing the water to drain out. So it's basically just whoever buys the place has to just kind of reshape it a little bit and then put the liner back up over. But sorry, I'm trying to stay sitting up. My back's just kind of hurting. So from the time of getting to the home to now, I've already put, and even in my relationship, she put some money into some of the repair materials, especially for the bathroom and then the ceiling fan. Overall, I've dumped about, well, I've already spent over 30 grand on it just in house payments, which I'm not complaining about. I would have spent way more when it came to paying rent, twice that easily. And then repairs, materials, and all that stuff. I've already put about right around 50 grand into that place. Just on, the basic repairs and all that shit, not counting everything outside, the things that had to be done with the property there. My goal at that point was to just focus on raising the value of the property and the home, which was to get it as livable as possible, get as much of the primary shit repaired, like the electrical, the plumbing, any of the rotted floors, that stuff. And that's what I did. I replaced a lot of the rotted floors, put a new top floor, and then new top floor, whatever you want to call it. Worked my ass off there. And so I'm with the sell. That money doesn't just go in my pocket. It obviously pays off the house. It pays off what actual few bills I have. I really don't have a lot of bills. I didn't try to build up a bunch of shit. And then to pay my family back. With what's left, that's what I have to get another home, and to reinvest, and also to deal with the moving costs and vehicle. That's the thing, is it sounds like I'm getting a lot, but really it's not a lot. For someone like me, it's a lot. For the average person out there who has a decent job or even works at a grocery store, has already seen more money than I have in my life. I mean, I've been around a lot of really rich people and had good times with some. Others, it was like, I'm not sure I really like bumping elbows with this person. But I've just never been super money driven. And I think that's been part of my problem. I don't care for it. And the more people held it over my head about not having enough, the more I disliked it. And it's not that. I view it as a necessary tool to get by in this form of living on this planet. If the system was different, then I wouldn't necessarily have a huge need for it. You know what I mean? And the fact that all I'm looking out to do in life is to be able to do something that I can do and enjoy, and not just make life easier for myself with kind of how the economy's going. It's not like it's going to get any easier necessarily. It'll get easier than what I've been dealing with. But it gives me a chance too that I will have a ability to be able to give back in some form or another. And that's the part that I like about it. It's not just being able to be independent, be able to run my own business, that type of stuff. It's to be able to do things I enjoy and still be able to help other people, make people smile. Even when right now to most people I'm just a grumpy bastard right now. But getting that for this house here, that was more based on my dad's credit than my own. Having paid off, caught my bills up, got my credit raised, that put me in a position to be able to find a home. Even though it's not in this state, I was able to look somewhere else that I could see myself either making it a permanent home or a long-term home, to where I can make a real start in life. You're not going to see me run from one expensive state to another one. It's learning to work with the boundaries you have, and that's what I've been doing on my financial aspect. Getting this home, this next home, and being able and having raised my credit, I don't need cosigners. Technically, I don't need money for the down payment. And a lot of that had to do with I made sure to pay my bills first. Yeah, over the last 5-6 years, I've gotten a few alright things. A lot of it had to do with I'm a VHS movie collector, so those things you can either find free or get them for between 10 cents to $1 a piece at your local thrift shop. So, like, there's certain aspects from my dad that I've obviously picked up on, and that's, I don't care whether or not I live in a really big, nice mansion, and I don't necessarily care if I have all these really super nice things. I'm pretty happy with the simple shit. And you'd be surprised how much 10 cents can actually make me, kind of make my day with the new movie. That's the irony of that. It doesn't take $10,000 to make me super happy. I'd be happy with the 10-cent or free movie. Because I don't know. I grew up watching movies a lot, and I learned a lot of outside of being a kid and kids being more open back then, and more kids just typically are more accepting of differences than you think. More accepting. It's usually when you get the one jackass kid that starts to pick on or bully or poke at certain differences, that they will egg on others to follow suit, even when they know better, or just don't understand what they're doing, other than they think they're having fun, but really they're being bullies. But back then, for my childhood, it was easy to socialize with people, but I also learned a lot of the socialization from things that I saw on TV and movies. And movies, for me, also is what helps trigger memories for me, where some people it's for smell. It's when I see certain things, hear certain things, and with movies, it triggers memories for me. And I've got a very large collection. I mean, when you get like a 12-foot U-Haul and 90% of it is movies, that should tell you something. I have more movies than I have of anything else. Next to, I like cooking with cast iron, so I have a big laundry basket full of cast iron. But I didn't go for the first, for even right now, technically my first home. I'm not looking for, even though I built my credit up enough and know that with zero down payment, I have a good enough credit. I can find that $200,000 home and not need a down payment. But I look at the aspect of, do I want to jump in with high, not necessarily high interest, but do I want to make these monthly house payments that are that are technically double the house payments that I make now. Mind you, paid I pay at this point, because of the whole, I think property tax thing went up a little bit, I pay like $670 a month. And then with utilities, might as well say I was paying just right around $800 a month in total with the utilities, because we had septic and a well. So that took away the need for, city sewer and water type thing. Didn't have a whole lot there. So I look, when it comes to looking for a home, I'm going, okay, what's within a reasonable price that I can afford to start out in my first home, whether this be a permanent first home or long-term first home, that doesn't require the amount of work that the one I've been living at had needed or still needs. I don't go looking for that because I know that's unrealistic. So instead, I've been looking at homes with that, although I can go for this and afford it, that's at my top range. And obviously there's a bottom range, and it's like, I could get that home. I might even be able to buy it outright, but I'm not going to live in something that puts me in the same position that I'm at now. So I try to find something kind of in that, how would I say, low mid to mid range price range, because that gives me a chance to not only get a home that I can appreciate, I can enjoy, I can afford it. Over time, that home builds up not just value, but you're building up your credit every time you make a proper payment. And we do live in a world where you have to have decent to good credit to really do a lot of things. And even if you don't have the greatest income, it's still possible for you to get a home. It's just recognizing that you have to be willing to wait to live that lifestyle you desire to live. And whether, if you're in my shoes, where you can't really do a lot of the things that you used to due to health, or you're somebody who's perfectly healthy and working a minimum wage job, or somebody who's working a good job. A lot of it is just build your credit up. Don't go, I ended up building my credit in 2 ways. Well, technically 3 ways. Errands, of all things, or like Rent-A-Center. That helped build my credit up, but that was real slow. It was a super slow process. And then what actually kind of helped jumpstart it, other than, obviously you pay off your bills as you build them up, whether you got car payments, house payment, rental, all these things, you pay that. I'll get into this part. So it's like, when I realized I needed to build my credit up a little faster than what it was through like errands and stuff like that, and paying my typical bills, when, of all things, PayPal came out with, their PayPal credit thing, I took advantage of that. I was like, you know what? I'm not a big fan of credit cards, because my parents went through multiple bankruptcies, and I watched what they went through to rebuild their credit and then just do it all over again. It's like, I don't want to do that. But I realized I needed to build my credit up and be smart about it. And so that's what I did. I ended up, dealing with the PayPal credit. I still paying for it. And thankfully, once my home is sold, that's one of the bills I'm paying off. My credit got well enough that, yeah, I can go get a home, no cosigners, no down payment, all that shit. And instead of finding a $200,000 home, I'm looking for something that's, let's say, in the 130 to 80,000 range. In the part of the country I'm looking at, I can find a 2-bedroom in those ranges. I can find a decent 3-bedroom in those ranges, depending on what part of the state, and I should say states, that I'm looking at, because there's like 5 states I've been looking in, leaning very much towards one, and all, because, well, I guess, I don't know, I'm very drawn to it, other than the fact that my grandparents were all born there, for the most part, other than my grandpa, one of my grandpas. But a lot of it is recognizing that you're not the only person that's broken, struggling financially. It's just knowing how to work with what you got and recognizing your limitations and not living above your means. Because the moment you live above your means, you're kind of just, you might as well say, kiss those dreams goodbye, and you're in a bitch the rest of your life on why you can't live the life you want. And it's because you tried to live it before you, in essence, did the work for it. Some people look at my situation and go, these things came too easy for you. They don't realize what I've had to go through between health, working, down to even working for free. There's a lot of shit. There's more to just, yeah. There's multiple ways to get through life without having to be a douchebag or steal from someone. And there are multiple forms of working that doesn't always necessarily come in the form of a paycheck. I've had to work in exchange for things needed for my home. I've had to work in exchange for more work that needed to be done on my property, like the pond. That wasn't done for free, and that was like a 4 or 5 months process. Working to help my neighbor repair a road while helping work to put in that pond. That's where all that soil went to. It went to repairing a road. So I worked for free, and in essence, my neighbors worked for free also to get things done that needed to be done. Like, they needed their road repaired. I was needing to work on updating and putting things in on the property that would raise its value. And try to do so smart-wise. Because most of the value in any home is going to be in the property it sits on, unless there's a historical value in there too, to some degree. Well, I should say to a large degree, because if you found the right historical place, there's going to be more value in that history than the actual in essence, the actual property value. But I didn't want to waste not only my dad's investment, because I knew just by paying on the home, I was helping him. I was helping keep his credit up. While simultaneously, I not only raised the value of the home, I learned, I already understood home ownership for most part being a renter, but there's a difference between being a renter and a homeowner. And so in this case, I'm a homeowner. I'm on the title of the home, that type of thing, where I'm just a secondary person on the loan. Yet the responsibility was all on my plate to pay for the home, make the house payments, that type of thing, to do the repairs, the upkeep, manage the property, upkeep the property, update the property, all of it. When the snow falls, it was on me to dig the snow out in the driveway every winter until I literally couldn't do it anymore. I'd be able to get out there for the first couple weeks, and then after that I could barely get out there once a week because of what it was doing to to my back and everything. It if you regularly throw your back out, like, it can take the slightest action to do so. You probably would understand. You probably understand what it's like. You even with a back brace, you move wrong, and it throws it out, and you might be down for the next 2-3 days. You might be okay to walk for most part, but it creates severe pain. Where with me, I go at risk of where, I don't know if it's like pinching a nerve or something, but I go at risk of losing my legs. I could be out shoveling in the driveway and end up finding myself not having use of my legs and stuck in 2-3 feet of snow, and nobody knows I'm there, and it's snowing, and I can't do anything about it. Two things will happen. Either somebody doesn't find me there till it's basically too late, or I get run over from somebody trying to get up the driveway and they don't see me under the snow. So it's like there's these risks that I wasn't willing to take anymore. But by building up the value of the home, it gave opportunity to not only try to help keep my dad's credit above. He was doing great. He had great credit until my son fucked it up, and part of that turned into an I told you so situation. That's a totally different thing to talk about. Because I told him don't do it. But it allowed me to when given the opportunity to invest that money, I was given, I'll put it in sense, I was given, like I said, the $20,000 to be able to get the home and do what repairs was necessary, to the point that I was paying for a lot in that process to pay for a good chunk of it, because of that 20 that was given, 10 of it was towards the home, 10 of it was towards doing some of the repairs. When we had the bat thing, that took half of that 10. But to make it, put it this way, it allowed that $20,000 of inheritance to invest, and I took that $20,000 and I turned it into over $200,000. Which, if you take away what I owe in the house, all that stuff, and then before, paying bills and then paying them back, it ends up being like $120,000. So I made I technically made 6 times, took $20,000 and turned it into 6 times that. I was given an opportunity. I was not going to fucking waste it. No matter how much it hurt, how much things sucked, and how alone I was through all of it. Even when I had somebody there that wasn't really being supportive at all, I was dealing with a lot of abuse, and I still had to work through it. After things are left, and what's left over, I'm not going to see that, 120, obviously, because of the bills, and then paying my family back, and all that shit. Which isn't a bad thing. It's what you're supposed to do in these cases, especially when the expectation is you sell the home, you pay them back. If you keep the home, you stick by your word, and you keep doing what you need to do to repair that home and make it a completely livable home, like you're supposed to in any case when you buy a house and you're a homeowner. You don't just let it sit and fall apart. And so the key to all of this, of what I'm explaining to people and all, after all this rambling, is, especially for this next generation, it is possible for you to get a home. It's 2 things that you need to look at and keep in mind, and it's the 2 things that will get you there. You need to, there's a few things, and I'll try to keep them easy to understand. And the first thing is, don't live above your means. Don't live the lifestyle you want to live before you can afford it. The other is, you need to work on your credit. You create a bill, you pay for it. You don't wait for it to reach that 6-7 years to drop off and then do it again. Your credit doesn't build up that quick that way. And when it comes to school loans and all that stuff, I understand that. I've had to pay for mine. I've paid mine off. It was not easy. Think about it. $634, $637 a month for a long time there. Worked for a few years. All that shit. I had to pay mine off. And there was forms of government assistance out there for people who are disabled to help you pay that off and all that. No, I paid mine off. I went and paid for mine. So if you create a bill, you need to recognize you're responsible to pay for that. If you pay your bills, even if you're still owing on it, as long as you're paying on it, that's building up your credit. And when especially these lenders, they see that and your credit's doing well, the next thing is you need to keep in mind your income. Yeah, you might get approved for, let's say, a $250,000 home loan. Does that mean you go out and you get a $250,000 home? No. That is probably one of the worst things you could do. If you have the income and you have the credit to be able to get cleared for $250,000 home, my best advice to you is to look for something that's in the mid zone to that, in the 125, 150 range. And I know in places like Oregon, California, and stuff like that, that's impossible to do. So if, let's say, you got cleared for more than that and your income can cover for more than that, just remember, if you got covered, let's say even if you got approved for a $500,000 home loan, you look for something in the $250,000 range. Your first home is not always or hardly will ever be your last home. Let alone will it hardly ever be your dream home or what have you. Most people don't find their dream homes till they actually really start getting to my age. It's just, sadly for me, I took the long route, cross between being disabled and being stupid. Excuse me. And so I had to wise up about a lot of things. There was a lot of things I had already wised up about. Like, the moment I was asked if I wanted to have custody of my son, I was like, fuck yeah. That day, I was like, yes. He was living with me within 10 days of that. On my 22nd birthday. On my birthday is when I got custody of him, and it wasn't a battle or anything like that. That was probably the best birthday gift I could have got, along with what came with that. I had already started pulling my life together at that point. It was just learning. It wasn't even then. It's like not like I never had a problem of living beyond my means. It was just learning to be a little smarter about how I spent my money. And making sure that I pay my bills before I pay for pleasure. That type of thing. Paying before pleasure, I guess you could say. But it took me a long time to finally let it click in my head. And it wasn't until like in my 30s for myself for it to really click in my head. I needed to build my credit up. And it wasn't just my credit. I needed to make sure that I needed to kind of continue what I was doing by not living above my means, but making sure that when I got something, it wouldn't necessarily cost my entire income to have. Especially if you're doing something like if you're married, it should be easier. You're splitting those payments, but still do the same thing as I suggest. It's more money in your pocket that way. You know, it allows you more money to do any repairs you might have to do, whether it's over a short amount of time or long term. You have that extra income to be able to do it, and it won't necessarily cut into any money you might have to be able to go do something fun. Granted, living off of my income, a lot of people struggle to find those balances. You end up in like my shoes where you're sitting there with $50 a month. And you have to find other ways to scratch by or hope in like my case, I got lucky that I had family that could help me out once in a while to be able to get fuel to come visit them, or every now and then to get a bag of tobacco so I could roll my smokes. So I'd make my own smokes. I'd buy a pound of tobacco for like $20, and then like 5 boxes of those tubes, and for 25-30 bucks I had between 5 and 6 cartons of cigarettes right there. And that's a vice that I've admitted that I struggle with, and I just really haven't bothered to try and work on it again. There's a story behind that as well, and I know that I've got to kick the habit. But instead of going and spending $10-20 on 2 packs of smokes, basically, I'd spend, might as well say $30 for 3 packs of smokes. I'd spend $30 and get 6 cartons by doing that. That was a way I got around with not spending, might as well say $300 a month on a bad habit. If you really, in the long run, really want to live a certain lifestyle, you have to kind of plan out how you're going to get there and not just go, I'm going to be there. Everybody tells you, you have to visualize yourself there, what you want to do, what kind of life you want to live, all that stuff. But they don't really remind you that you have to also, in that process, keep in mind that there is a process that you need to take, that you need to plan out for yourself on how you're going to get there. You can't sit there and go, well, I'm in New York, but I'm going to be living in California here in 3 months, and in that time period, I'm not going to plan how I'm going to get there. Everybody plans how they're going to get there. And that's what you got to do with this. And like I said, the key thing is you need to build your credit up. Don't live above your means. Be willing to deal with less now so that you can have more later. I've had to learn this the hard way. And I've never looked at bankruptcy as an option for me. I've never filed for it, never dealt with it. I watch what it does. It makes things way fucking harder. And so, by understanding and knowing this, it allowed me to be able to go, okay, just kind of rethink, okay, how can I build my credit up? Originally, how could I build my credit up without owning a credit card? And I did that, like I said, through errands. Rent-A-Center, for most people who might recognize that over errands. Same type of deal. I realized it was doing things slowly, especially after when my wife walked and pulled all these loans. That fucked my credit up really bad. And I had to pay for that for months. I mean, it took me like 8 months, something like that, almost a year to pay off all these loans that she pulled out before she fucking vanished. And even after she left, she had pulled out a multiple loan. And a lot of it was just the fear of owning any form of credit card. So, I mean, like, if you can get, like, a K Jewelers card or a PayPal, like I said, a PayPal card, as long as you pay that back, you don't have to go out and buy something expensive and have these great big $100, $300 a month payments. You can buy something for $30-40 and pay it your next payday. That's still building your credit up and pretty quickly. And you give yourself a year or two and all that, and as long as you're paying your bills, paying them off, and paying for what you're doing there, and you're building your credit up, and you're getting like a 620 and better, you're in a position you can get a home. It's just at that point going, okay, if I'm gonna move, let's say out of state to a place that's more affordable, let's say temporarily, so that it allows you to build up money to make a down payment, let's say in your current state, like say that's where you want to stay. Or you might have to move to, let's say, a different part of this current state you're in, and it's a cheaper part. You have to some degree, be willing to make that sacrifice so you can make that step. And just keep in mind, it's a 5-year plan. I'll live there, I'll work on the home, I'll keep it updated, keep it clean, do what repairs that might be necessary. I'll raise work on a lot more on raising the property value, and not just keeping the home maintained and repaired, because your home's going to gain value in time anyways. And a lot of it, again, it's going to also come from a lot of your property. So what you do with your property, it's like adding fruit trees to your property, a functioning garden, all that stuff. That actually raises the value of your property. Fruit trees, on average, depending on the trees, fruit and nut trees, food-bearing trees, a lot of times they can add value to your home, from a couple $1,000s to a few $1,000s a piece. So having a yard, finding that place where, you might find that home with that little half-acre lot or quarter-acre lot. If you got room to put in apple trees and cherry trees, stuff like that, and put in a decent little garden, even raised bed gardens, you're raising the value of your home and your property. Look at that time as a time to invest as that is, you're not just investing in that current home, you're investing in your future, because you're raising the value of the home that you have. So that when you do turn around and resell it, then you don't just have the money to pay that off. You now have the money at that point to make the down payment, preferably for the home that you actually want. That type of thing. Or for all you know, that second home is now your next step towards that home you want or you want to build. This is how businesses make more money. This is how a lot of your average, people do a little bit more, build up their money a little bit over time, and not just with their jobs and careers, is you don't have to get into realty to do it. It's just simply recognizing that you need to start treating your home as not just an investment for the present. It's your investment for your future, because that is going to be your biggest asset, is your house and property. And as long as you keep, do your best to keep up on it, all that type of stuff, it's going to gain value. Trust me. An example, when they tell you manufactured homes don't gain value, then how is it that a manufactured home on its own, built in the 70s, sold for between $10,000 and $20,000, maybe $30,000 a pop, are now selling between $90,000 and $200,000 a piece, depending on where you live. In Oregon, you will find manufactured homes built from the 70s and 80s and even the 90s that sold anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a piece. You're lucky to find for under $100,000. So think about that. They say they don't gain value. Yeah, a lot of that's inflation. Yet you bought that home at 20, 30 grand, regardless of inflation. Your loan that you're locked in on doesn't go up with that inflation, to where when you sign it, it's 20, 30 grand, but then magically now 30 years later, it's 100 grand. It doesn't work that way unless you decide to keep refinancing your home. Don't do that. It helps when you need to at times, but really don't do that. If you find yourself in a hard position, you find a way to work through it without cutting into a lot of that. Because really, you're just exchanging one problem for another, really. But I'm explaining this to you from somebody who really doesn't make shit for an income, yet is found themselves in a position where they can get a home. They can afford to buy a home and do so without anybody else on that loan. And it all has to do with build your credit, which means pay your bills. Even if they're small bills, pay them. Try to limit that as best as possible. It might suck not being able to eat out every night or every weekend or going drinking with your friends on a regular basis. You need to pay your bills first, then play. It might suck not being able to go hang out with your friends again, like I said, on the weekends. And they might think you're, some form of Debbie Downer because you're telling them, yeah, I really can't afford to go out this weekend. I mean, if you want, we can probably pick up something from the liquor store. It's a little cheaper. A fifth at the liquor store costs you 2-3 drinks at the bar. Or depending on what you drink, 1 drink. So it's like, get together at each other's places. We can, we can shoot the shit here. We can get shitty if you want. If you want to invite a few friends, yeah, do so. BYOB type thing. Find other ways to still enjoy your time without having to dump a bunch of money going out, because it's where you're going to be spending all your money, let alone in the objective things that you want. The nice things, I don't blame you. Everybody wants nice things. Find other places to shop from that you can still get those nice things, but you're not paying out the ass for. Like when somebody introduced me to Ross, other than jeans, 9 times out of 10, I will not buy jeans there because I do not like wearing jeans with the bedazzled bullshit on the butt. It's too fruity for me. It's just not for me. But otherwise, when it comes to like shoes, like Adidas, stuff like that, I'm spending $20-$30 instead of $60 to $100. Don't be afraid to shop somewhere cheaper. You can still find the same stuff for cheaper. And this rat race called life gets easier when you're not trying to keep up with the Benjamins, and you're not trying to live life impressing the next person or impressing people on social media. I mean, you'll get there. It does get easier. It's always a pain in the ass. And yet, if you, like I said, just pay your bills, build your credit up, focus on pay attention to what your income is, and just recognize that half of your income should, depending on what it is, because I know there's a lot of people like myself, 90% of your income's going into your home. But what I'm suggesting to those who are making more money than me, even those who are working minimum wage right now make more money than me. You're still capable of getting a home of your own, even if you're paying rent and it's keeping you broke. Do your best to avoid going out and financing nice things. Don't go out financing brand new cars, that type of stuff. Sure, you might go, okay, I like that $10,000-$20,000 car. Yeah, I could afford this amount of money in payments each month, but you're probably maxing it out. And a lot of times what I advise to people is don't be afraid to buy a $2,500 to $5,000 car. My little car, my little Fiat, yeah, it's considered a little luxury foreign car. I didn't buy that brand new. I had to pull together a decent sized down payment. And it was like a $5,000-$6,000 car. I still owe like $500 on it because my payments aren't huge. But I didn't go looking for. I avoided going for these $10,000-$20,000 vehicles. It's been tempting once my home's sold to trade mine up for a 4-door, but I recognize I don't really want to cut into the moving costs and risk cutting into what I have planned to reinvest towards starting my own business. And now some people, you got to realize too, like I look at some of these businesses, like for example, let's say to start a pet store, because I have looked at that. In the area that I've looked at, or the state I've looked at possibly opening up something like that, it would cost me at minimum about $16,000 to open a pet store, to start one. Food carts at minimum in that state between $25,000 and $50,000. Produce stores, small produce stores, that type of stuff to start out. Again, it's right in that It's a little bit more than a food cart, food truck, but it's about in that $50,000 to $75,000 range to start something like that. And that's about average. You can, if you work it right, you might be able to do it less, that type of thing. But it's still possible for even those who don't have a large income to still be able to start a business of their own. I was probably taught a little different than a lot of other people, and part of that had to do with, I'll even admit, was a bit of influence from Amway. Some people might go, oh, that's a pyramid scheme. McDonald's is a pyramid scheme. Literally, I'll put it in this way. McDonald's is where the pyramid scheme began. You watch the movie The Founder and learn how that began and how McDonald's is, in reality, it's in the realty business before it's in the fast food business. McDonald's is the largest, owns more properties than anybody else. It's the largest realty company in the world. But theirs is in franchising. So, and within franchising, it's one business signing up another business, that type of thing. And then corporate goes out, buys properties all over the place, puts in McDonald's, and then they run it. And a lot of times over time, if somebody wants to open a franchise, they can take over one of those corporate locations, and you'll always have a corporate HQ somewhere when it comes to those. But majority of them are going to be franchise businesses. It's the same. It's a pyramid scheme. You buy into this, all this shit, and then you can sign in. You can actually help somebody else become a franchisee, and you actually get a kickback from that too. It's the same thing as with Amway. Someone gets you started in as a franchisee, basically, and then you help somebody else get started into it too over time. If somebody wants that chance, they can do it. And if you help them in that sense, you get a kickback from that. So it's the same thing. In fact, that business model is used in multiple companies, including places like Kirby. Kirby uses the same business model. A good large chunk of your fast food restaurants use that same business model that McDonald's uses. Just some have moved to a digital thing, where others remain brick and mortar. We also live in that day and age where thankfully you can start an online business for basically nothing. You just have to be willing to do the work to, in essence, market it. Whether I've seen a lot of people really start out well doing t-shirts of all things. Like, they could push it. I have a t-shirt shop. I just don't push it. I have a published book. I just don't push it. I've had a published book for a while, and I want to work on the second one. I find myself so distracted. Part of it's my fault, and part of it's just shit you just can't control. I don't make a lot of money on that. I wish I made the money for what they've sell for over in the UK and places like that. I mean, yeah, I sell it for it's been selling for $20-$30 online for the most part. I only see 10% of that. Yet overseas it sells for as much as 200 to, I think the highest priced one I saw was 325. I think it's pounds or something, the L symbol for the currency instead of the American dollar. So probably closer to $400, which is crazy. I'd like to see 10% of that, $40 instead of $2-$3. But I try to work around my limitations. Plus, I have this shitty problem of I'm so eclectic and have so many interests. It's hard for me to focus on one thing in long periods of time. That's why I really want to of all things, actually open a food cart or a little produce store and then open the other one as a secondary business linked to it. So it allows me to kind of change my environment ever so often a little bit so that I don't lose my interest. I can work in the kitchen and cook. Otherwise, I can also work in the produce store, and I can, I can work in my gardens and all that, because I want to have a greenhouse on my property to be able to supply some of the produce that I sell in the store and not just be growing what I need for the next year and be preserving it. I can take the excess and sell it in my little produce store type thing. It allows me to do more than one thing and allow my brain to go from one thing to the next without having to worry about not just job stability or having to quit one job to go to the next and all that shit, because I might get bored in one little environment. It's creating a workspace that I can do multiple things and still, sorry, I'm shaking because part of it, I'm getting hypoglycemic, I'm hungry, but it allows me to do what I want to do, things I enjoy. I enjoy cooking, and I enjoy growing things in gardens and growing food and all that stuff, and being able to sell that, what I grow. It's the same as being able to cook and see people enjoy it and appreciate it. It allows me to be able to make money from things that I enjoy doing. Excuse me. Within my produce store, I have a chance to be able to sell my photography as well. There's a few things that I want to do with it. I mean, the food cart type thing, I want to be able to have on evenings, be able to have movie nights on Friday and Saturday nights. Maybe have sport nights too, with the projector and a large, screen to view it on. It's integrating all these things that I enjoy into one thing type thing. Of all things, I actually thought about looking for an old storage unit facility, a small one, to where I can convert myself a couple of the storage units, one or two into my little produce stand type, the produce store type thing, pet and produce, another one into my, outdoor restaurant, and then lease out the other ones, large storage units, to other people who might want to open a business there also, a small business, kind of like an outdoor mall, farmer's market type thing, where people can still sit and eat, shop, do all that type of thing, and it'd be year round. I've got a lot of things that I've there's just so many things down to I want to be able to help domestic violence victims, people who are victims of narcissistic abuse to domestic abuse, people who may have been guilty of committing it, and helping them get the counseling they need so that they don't do it again. Part of me is also wanting, of all things, to be able to open a pet rescue, because I look at all my animals I have around me, and it's something I've had a love for. I've got so many passions in my life, it's hard to just do one thing at a time in that sense. And so it's a way, I'm making a large plan to figure out a way to start in one spot to where I can reach that goal in the long run of being able to maybe do all these things at once and have them all feed off each other, all support each other. And that's something that I want, that I think that this younger generation needs to do, instead of just losing hope because things get really hard, because it's not going to get easy. It doesn't matter what generation you're born into. It's always easiest when you're a child, and it'll always get harder for you as you get older. It's still not fair what this next generation is going to be faced with, but they also got to look at what they need to prioritize in their life. Nice things and looking good for their friends and people on social media, or do they want to reach that lifestyle without fucking themselves over too? Because our economy, our politics make it hard enough, and we make things hard enough for each other too. So part of making things easier for yourself is just recognizing, don't live above your means, build your credit up, and don't expect your first home to be a mansion. You got to work your way there. A lot of people who ended up living in those rather large homes and even those mansions, a lot of times didn't get into those until they're in their 30s or 40s, unless they're already born into a very wealthy family, or they got lucky, or they happen to be smart and choose the right career path to get themselves there. And sometimes, if you find a career path they enjoy, stick to it. Otherwise, if you wish to start your own business and become an entrepreneur, find ways to make that happen. And in the process, keep in mind that part of that is your home. Your home affects your ability to do these things, and be smart about how you spend that. Don't go take your maximum amount of what you might, let's say you build your credit up. Don't go taking that $150,000, $250,000, or $500,000 approval and max it out. Look for something that's in the mid-range, unless if you're on the lower side, and I can admit, it doesn't matter where you are in the country, it is hard to find it, especially if there's like a family, let's say a family of 4 or more, and you've got a son and daughter and they need to have their own rooms. To find that 3-bedroom home or whatever, it can get difficult to find a home that's, let's say, in the $100,000 to $150,000 range in this country, anywhere. But there are places that you can find them. And so finding anything less than that, let's say, and you got $150,000 approval, and finding a home that's, 3-bedroom, livable, minimal repairs, that type of stuff, for $75,000, that's what I mean. It's almost impossible. You really narrow down yourself to certain spots of the country at that point. It's kind of what I did to myself, but I don't mind, because I probably will fit into those areas a lot better than I do here, where I've basically grown up. I wasn't born here in Oregon, but I was, for most part, raised here. I was born an Army brat. We moved a lot and finally settled in Oregon. That's where my family's from, not me. I wasn't born here. But again, I'm repeating myself, so I'm gonna cut this here. Yeah, build your credit. Don't live above your means. Even when you get to that point where you're doing well, you're successful, you're financially set, don't live above your means, because you'll watch that drain away faster than you got it. And don't expect that don't expect your first home, just like your first car, is gonna be that brand spanking new mansion that you want, or what have you. Your first home is rarely gonna be that. And even though that seems difficult to do, it really is not that difficult to do. Just pay your bills. That is the key part of it. Pay your bills. And just know that every time you're paying your bills, you're building your credit. And when you build your credit, and you've got good to great credit, and you can get that approval, just know that then at that point, you're one step away from owning your own home. It's just then at that point making sure that if you have to move out of state, that you know that you can find a job that you're doing in that area and get something lined up. Say you're going, okay, I've found a home in these 3 places, and in these 3 places there's these, let's say 3 jobs in each place that you can apply for. When you know what home you're going for, you make your offer, and let's say your offer is accepted. Then you can turn around, while you're dealing with getting that home, dealing with the paperwork and all that, you can contact those jobs and line your job up. At least line up your interviews. Be smart to use at least save, or have about 2 to 3 months saved for a house payment. A lot of times, if you're smart about it, like for myself, the homes I'm looking for, they're going to put me in the payment range that I'm paying now. I'm thankfully going to end up a lot better home than what I'm in now. That gives me the ability that if I must, while I'm trying to get my own business started, whatever it may be, I can go work part-time, still afford to pay for my home, still to live all right, be comfortable, not be super stressed, but still have that time to work on starting my business. So it's like, plan what you're doing before you get there. Pay for what you need to. Pay your bills. It's flat out, pay your bills. Things, you'll get there. You will get there. You may not get there when you want to. Not everybody does, but you'll get there. I said, when I start pulling my shit together and start doing this is 20 years in the making. And I know people out there like my oldest brother who's owned their homes by their mid-20s. Even now, I know people out there who are in their 20s who got their home before I did. So don't lose hope. Thanks for watching.